So I think I'm getting into my stride now with these favourite films videos I've been making. We're now on to number 7, which is The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. So Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings film trilogy is one of my favourite film series now, but I have to confess, when I first saw The Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers in cinemas, I thought they were very good, but I wasn't really that enamoured with them. And I think that was because I really needed some time to understand the world of Middle-earth. When I got the films on DVD later and watched them again, I found I liked them a lot better, and I was really quite hyped up for Return of the King at that point. I didn't read the books in full until after I'd seen all the films, and to be honest, I prefer Jackson's films to the books. I mean, the books they're good, but I think they're a bit dry and long-winded for me, to be honest. Also, I have seen the extended versions of the films, and there's a lot I like about them, but with Return of the King, I definitely prefer the theatrical version. With the extended version, the only scenes that I feel really add anything are having an actual confrontation with Saruman and getting some closure to that storyline, and then the scenes we get with Eowyn and Faramir in Minas Tirith after everybody else has gone to the Black Gate, because in the theatrical cut, Eowyn and Faramir pretty much disappear after the main battle, and we don't see them again until Aragorn's coronation, so it's good to see some more of them. But otherwise, most of the additional scenes aren't really that relevant. There's some extra comic relief with Gimli that doesn't really fit. And with the theatrical version, the pacing is much better. Every scene has something relevant in it, unlike the Hobbit movies, obviously. So I do think that Return of the King stands out compared to the other two films in the trilogy, though a lot of what makes it good can also be applied to the other two films. They've got these majestic New Zealand settings that fit Middle-earth very well. The score by Howard Shore is just brilliant. That's one of my favourites. Very intense for the battle scenes and very effective for the emotional scenes. The casting of just about everybody is perfect, and Gollum is handled really well, both with the special effects and the performance by Andy Serkis. But ultimately, this is the film where they brought out the big guns for everything, after everything they'd already set up. So just going into this movie in the cinema, I was already really hyped up, because this is the final chapter. This is what everything has been building towards. The story is going to be over by the time this film is over. And I was just very excited to see how it was going to turn out. Even though this is the final chapter in one big story, it is still self-contained in its own way and has its own structure. So at this point we find the story moving in a definite direction towards Minas Tirith. Because after all this time we spent in the previous films fighting the forces of Isengard, now the main villain, Sauron, is bringing out his own forces. The armies of Mordor are finally coming out to play, and they make it very clear just how big an army it is facing our heroes. We see Frodo and Sam at Minas Morgul watching this army of orcs first coming out, and then they start climbing the stairway up the wall. We cut back to them a few scenes later. They're a good way up the wall, and that army is still coming out down below. And if that wasn't bad enough, we get some extra bits to make things look even more bleak for the protagonists. We see the Nazgul and their flying beasts come in and start dive-bombing these Gondor soldiers on their horses, and there's nothing they can do about it until Gandalf intervenes. We see Frodo getting manipulated by Gollum and turning against Sam even after everything they've been through. That's a real low point. And then even more Gondor soldiers get sent on this suicide mission where they get massacred by orcs. Things are really not looking good for the heroes at this point. And yet we do get these little moments of hope. The scene where the beacons are lit to call to Rohan, that was a really brilliant scene. The music in that scene is probably one of the best bits of sound in the whole trilogy. And then there's a journey that Aragorn has been through in this whole trilogy, and we finally see him embracing his destiny as the rightful king of Gondor. And there's this theme throughout of, even though the protagonists know that the odds are against them, they're still going to try, they're still determined. Gimli sums it up perfectly when he says, "Certainty of death, small chance of success. What are we waiting for?" So the Battle of Minas Tirith, this incredibly epic battle sequence, is pretty much the centrepiece of the film, and we're close to the halfway point by the time we actually get there. It's all been building up to this. The effort and the special effects involved are just amazing, like they have been for the rest of the trilogy. These hundreds of thousands of orcs, all of which have an individual design, these little details like the trolls with drums. And the battle gets divided into these different stages, and like I said with the pacing before, I feel each stage lasts just the right amount of time. We get these opening moves with the city catapults that do manage to take out a few orcs, but then suddenly the Nazgul show up again, and you think, how are they supposed to fight these flying monsters? After the orcs have broken into the city, the Rohirrim show up, which is great. We get this massive cavalry charge into the orcs. I mean, anyone who's played the Total War games will know how satisfying it is to get a whole bunch of horses together and then slam them into some infantry, as long as it's not spearmen. And everything's looking up for the good guys, and then suddenly the Mumakil show up, the giant Oliphants. And once again you think, how are they supposed to take this on? And we're seeing lots of people dying, main characters dying, others getting really badly injured. And it's only when Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli turn up with the army of the dead that the tone finally changes to this properly positive note. I remember in the cinema when Legolas brings down an Oliphaunt all by himself and Gimli says, "That still only counts as one." The whole cinema laughed at that point, which I thought was quite something, because UK cinema audiences, I find they don't tend to laugh as much as I think US cinema audiences do. So the film ends up spending quite a lot of time away from Frodo and Sam, but we do get some good scenes with them in Shelob's lair. There's this great atmosphere when Frodo's getting stalked by Shelob, this big, disgusting-looking spider. And Sam has this really valiant underdog scene where he takes on Shelob and actually wins. And I like one change they make from the book at this point, where we don't actually see that Sam takes the ring off Frodo when he thinks he's dead, because that does work with creating a good bit of tension later on, where we think the orcs have actually taken the ring off Frodo. So after this very long journey that we've been on through 2 films and what we've had of this one, it's all come down to this. Frodo and Sam are actually in Mordor now, they've made it. And meanwhile the other guys outside Mordor are going to the Black Gate for this last desperate effort. This is definitely the end game now. Nobody involved thinks they're coming back from this one, and the emotions are really running high. In the cinema, when Frodo was on the slopes of Mount Doom, crawling along on his belly, being weighed down by the ring, I was like, come on, you're so close, you're almost there. And then that great moment where Sam picks him up and he's taking these very slow steps forward, and you can see how much effort he's putting into it, and he's so exhausted, but he's still going, and it's brilliant. And so eventually, of course, they do make it into the Crack of Doom, and they do destroy the ring, and it is very, very satisfying. It's a very well-earned happy ending. And we get to see the whole fellowship reunited later on and laughing with each other, and we understand that it really is over now. Which is kind of ironic considering all the multiple endings that many people complain about, but I don't mind them. And finally, Frodo leaves Middle-earth behind because it feels very appropriate. His task is over now. I do like the end credits with the drawings of the different cast members to go with their names, and I do like how we see the words "the end" when it's all over. I kind of wish that the last Harry Potter film had done that. So those are my thoughts on The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, last film in a brilliant trilogy. Let me know what you thought of this film and the trilogy as a whole, and once again, thank you for watching.